reveal the secrets of the universe by the travel through time. Only when we take the inward journey will we discover the true universe, the forgotten truth about the self, the supreme and the eternal world drama. Find your answers from the experienced traveler, Sister Denise Lawrence, senior teacher over 40 years from Brahma Kumaris, World Spiritual University. Thursday, commencing the 4th of June. We welcome you, the seekers, to travel through time from the ancient wisdom to the modern way of living. The truth is that the seeker can come from many different backgrounds, living all kinds of lives. The truth is that you don't have to go anywhere. No bags to pack, but you do have to be ready to travel. Do you ever look at the sky and adorn the splendid galaxy and admire the infinity of the universe? Do you ever linger alone in the night, pondering the true meaning of life? What is the universal truth? Who am I? Where will I go after death? What am I doing here now? Relation of the universe and human answer to spirit and soul are in our inner true self and innate wisdom. Let us explore and reveal the secret of the universe to different in pictures and symbols in our mind. This is the 7 keys of enlightenment of the traveler. First, the light between the eyes. Second, the alpha point. Thirdly, the silent union. Fourth, the justice of karma. Fifth, the never-ending cycle. Sixth, recognizing the time. The 7, the door to the future.
Welcome to the 5th episode of this series, The Never-Ending Cycle. I, Perpetual will be your facilitator for this session. Today's topic is an essential one because it will answer many of your questions and will fit most of the missing pieces in the puzzle. Many of us have thought about what happens to the human beings throughout the timeline of the universe. When did life begin? And when will it end? Where did our journey start? And when and where will it finish? As we know, it's the natural law of nature. Anything in the beginning is new, but when, with time, becomes old and declines in its state and needs renewal. Likewise, in the Gita, it's mentioned, when human nature comes to a decline, the Supreme comes to renew the world and establish the righteousness and divinity once again. Today, in this session, we are going to discover the answers to the secret of time, universe, and cycle, and deeply understand the never-ending cycle with Sister Denise. For those who are joining us for the first time, Sister Denise comes from the UK, and she is a walking encyclopedia of Eastern wisdom. And the way she beautifully shares it with the modern outlook is amazing. As I've always said, she has embraced the Raja Yoga meditation by the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University at the age of 23. And since then, she has traveled across the globe, enlightening audiences with a unique depth of knowledge and wisdom. Sister Denise is among the few pioneer thinkers of our generation. And it's such a pleasure to have you, Sister Denise. We also have another pioneer thinker from the other side of the world, Sister La, with us from Thailand. I would invite Sister La to join us on this session.
Welcome, Sister Denise. You are not only the traveler through time, but an eternal actor. You come here to play your part on the world stage. Thailand has a special spotlight shining on you. now. So we can come and learn to spin the cycle with you. Watch out, we have the eternal director with us. So he lead off stage to make us learn to give respect to all things, self, others, matter, nature, time, and especially the freedom of all things to be. Now let us spin the wheel of time together as time moves in a cycle. With Sister Denise, we're so delighted to join the journey.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because we have people from all different time zones with us, and it is my great pleasure to be here once again with you all in Thailand. And yes, it is a very interesting, puzzling paradox that we know that time is cyclical. We know that time is cyclical, but yet our thinking tends to be linear. We know every day the sun rises, passes across the sky, and sets again. But yet Galileo long ago taught us that this is an illusion. Actually, the sun stands still and the earth is rotating. And when we look at the sun, we have the impression that it is moving, but in fact, we are moving. So we also pass through the cycle of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And just now, as I'm speaking with you from Germany, the season has just changed from summer into autumn. And there's a very definite line which delineates the change of seasons, and you can feel it. It's, of course, reflected in nature, and we prepare ourselves for living differently when the weather is colder and wetter in this part of the world. Yet still, our experience of life and all the documents that we have as part of our lives, like identification documents, passport, this kind of thing, always these documents give us a start, a duration, and then at the end, sooner or later, all of us do have to end and we will all die. And then we get a death certificate. And then there may be cremation or burial, but if there is burial, and even if there is cremation, sometimes the ashes are kept in an urn, and then that urn or that burial ground is marked with a stone. And there you see the name of the person and the date of birth and a little line, just about 2 to 3 centimeters long, and then the date of death. And this little line is identified as our life. So it is a little line within a hidden circle. Because before we get born, nobody really knows where we came from. And then when someone dies, it is said they've gone. And where? So sometimes it is said, well, they've gone to heaven, but where is that? Somewhere in the sky, but it's inaccessible for people. And so our experience of life is linear. So this is a paradox that we have to live with, that our sense of time in terms of our experience is linear, but when we observe things maybe more scientifically, and we see the bigger picture, then we see that it is definitely cyclical. So I think the challenge for us is to figure out how we, with a linear experience of time, fit ourselves into the larger picture, which is a big, big cycle, a never-ending cycle. The symbol of this is very ancient, and it is there in many cultures, and that is the symbol of the swastika. The swastika is a cross with legs, and sometimes the swastika is shown with little feet on the end of it, which shows that it is circling, it is running. So time is passing. What is the speed of time? We have clocks, analog clocks, digital clocks. Everything is run by clocks. We are very concerned about the calendar, what day it is, what time it is, what year it is. We want to know who we are, and we also want to know when we are. We are very interested in history. And if you look at any country in the world, in the school, the history of that part of the world begins at a certain point in time, and it is different for different places. Like in England, where I grew up, history begins basically 1,000 years before now. And then whatever was before that, nobody much talks about it. And in Europe, there is a time period of about 600 years. This time period of 600 years is known as the Dark Ages, where nobody really knows what happened, but it was a long time. And before that was the Roman Empire. And before that, well, we don't really think about it much. Archaeologists give us an insight on ancient times. Probably the most ancient place that is generally recognized is Mohenjo-Daro. Mohenjo-Daro, an ancient civilization in Pakistan. And we also have ancient scriptures. And the most ancient scripture of all, which Sister Prajwa mentioned, is the Gita. And this is a very mysterious scripture, but is said to be the most ancient of all. And this is the scripture which talks about yoga, and it also talks about time. And the Bible also talks about time, basically telling us that it is something like around 6,000 years for the whole historical cycle. Then the scientific community will tell us, well, the whole cycle may be something closer to 14 billion years in the past from now, where there was a Big Bang. And maybe after another 14 billion years, there will be another Big Bang. And so we see this time period within this parentheses of two Big Bangs. But even then, even though we're looking at very large numbers in terms of time, once you put a parenthesis, around that time period, then you have linear time. From 14 billion years in the past to 14 billion years in the future. And then after that, what? It is not said. So, you know, our thinking is all very linear. In astrology, the astrologers talk about the circling of the stars, and they speak about a 28,000 year cycle, which starts again every time 28,000 years passes. And their science is to read the past, present, and future according to the positioning of the stars. So there in astrology, you also do get a sense that time comes around again. And in the ancient civilization of the Mayans in Mexico, you also see a something like a 5,000 year cycle. So these cycles that are spoken about in myths and religions are long, but a lot shorter than the cycle we hear about from the scientific community. So the question I would like to present, or the angle I would like to present, is how we position ourselves who have linear thinking in a time frame which is cyclical. And essentially that means that we need to cast our minds to this question of what was going on before I started and what happens after I finish, and is it relevant to me if I start and then I finish? So in the previous session, we talked about karma, the justice of karma. And when we're talking about time, we're also aware about the processes of karma in the context of time. In time and in karma, we hear about the beginning, the continuation, and the end. We say, I do an act at this time, and this act that I do at this time happens because of so many things that went before, which led up to this. That is, the present time is very much the consequences of the past. And whatever I'm doing now leads to some consequences in the future. And so when we're thinking about time and when we're thinking about karma, in both cases, we're thinking about cause and effect. Now we come to the idea of a closed circle, time being a closed circle. When the scientific community gives us this very, very long billions of years time period, this is really an open-ended schematic where they're still looking at time in a linear way. But we can also think in terms of cause and effect that the first cause, because people always want to know, okay, if there is cause and effect, what is the first cause? So we can say that the first cause is the same thing as the last effect. And in this way, you have a schematic of a closed circle. Now, add to this the idea of deterioration or depreciation in value. So many of us find ourselves every year faced with having to pay annual taxes. And when people put their taxation form together, there is one section concerned with a depreciation in the value of your assets so that you are taxed less because the value of your assets is reducing due to the depreciation as a result of aging. So you may have a nice new $50,000 car, which after a few years ends up having a value of about $2,000, and you're not going to pay the same tax on that car when it's old as you do when it's new. So like this, depreciation of the value of everything is part of the process of understanding the procedure of time. Because you have two things here. On the one hand, the last effect is the same as the first cause, which brings the cycle to a closed schematic. But when something is new, it's at its most perfect, most integrated state. And when it is old, it is deteriorated, it is disintegrated, it has a tendency to fall apart. And this process of loss of integrity of things also applies to people. And this results in this depreciation in the quality of life, as well as a depreciation in the quality and value of the objects around us. Now, we have another idea which interferes with this. And this is the idea of progress. In Western culture, which is the dominant culture in the world today, most of the countries are run in the system of democracy. And the system of democracy is actually based on the principle of progress. Progress means that we are evolving, and this is supported by the findings of Charles Darwin. And so the scientific community adheres to this. And so there is a widely held belief that while everything is deteriorating, at the same time, we are progressing. It's a very paradoxical situation which needs to be looked at and analyzed to see what is really happening. Are we progressing, or are we deteriorating? Or is it possible to deteriorate and progress at the same time? And in the people who think linearly, there's also the idea of either or. Either we are progressing or we are deteriorating. But in order for people to feel good about themselves, we must hold on to the idea of progress. Because from a psychological point of view, if a person believes that every day that passes, every generation that passes, everything that is going to happen will be less good than what has happened, then it puts us into a state of depression, and then we will give up. And we cannot allow ourselves to give up. We must continue. We must continue to believe that there is hope, that we are getting somewhere, that we are advancing. And so we talk a lot about progress. And the thing that we use to really indicate that we are in a progressive world is technology. Because definitely, in terms of science and technology, we are evolving, we are progressing, and we can show the impact of technological innovation and progress in every aspect of our lives. I remember the days before there was internet, but half of the people who are living in the world today have never experienced life before the internet. They've never experienced life. They've never experienced life before television. They've never experienced life before a human being stepped on the surface of the moon. But in my lifetime, when the first man stepped on the surface of the moon, I remember everyone on earth, wherever they were, was watching it because it was an epochal change. And every so often in time, there are big changes. So we see technological advancements in terms of communications technology, also in terms of medicine, that so many diseases that were incurable are well within the purview of science. I also remember when the first open heart surgery was performed, a heart transplant, and this was also an epochal change. Nowadays, the technological advances are so rapid and frequent that we are used to having to make these epochal shifts far more rapidly than ever happened in the ancient past. So we also have a feeling of time speeding up. From the angle of our clocks, time is moving at a constant rate. But why is it that we have an impression that time is speeding up? So my thinking about this is that the speed of time, or the feeling of the speed of time, relates to the quantity of people who are on the earth and what they are doing. And the rapidity and the amount of actions that are going on within the human race, the human community, is more and more and more. Our thinking, our minds, people say, they feel their mind is racing. So something is happening to give us an impression that time is speeding up to a point where it almost as if it will burst. And so people feel stress from this. Now, I would like to look at this in a broader context. When we look at time as a cycle in terms of the ages of humanity, there are many who believe that at one time there was paradise on this earth. And there's no historical record of that, but there is a record in mythology and in poetry and the arts. Within people, there is a belief and a longing for an existence in a world of paradise. And then the opposite of that is defined as hell or the inferno. And we have great pieces of literature like the trilogy of Dante, which speaks about this. If we go to the ancient Indian myths, we also see that there is a legend, or there are several legends of the kingdom of paradise, which is fleshed out with the history of the emperors of the Golden Age and what life was like, which was also very high technology. This does not correspond at all with the Darwinian idea of evolution from amoeba to dinosaurs to other species, and then finally Homo sapiens appears and begins to dominate the world. And now we are facing actually different kinds of catastrophes in terms of climate change, in terms of political instability, economic fragility, and all of this is defined as the effect of human greed, human anger, human arrogance on the social and the natural system. So we are at a critical point in time. Now let us look at a large schematic of time, which we also study in the World Spiritual University of the Brahma Kumaris, which looks at time not as something linear, definitely a cycle, which is also a repeating cycle. And then the question arises, where are we in the cycle now? And this we will go into in a lot more detail in the next session. But overall, the cycle resembles to me the treble clef in music, where you're going round and then up and then down, and again round and then up and then down. And music is very symbolic. What moves us in music is when it goes to heights and to depths, and it carries us along. It really speaks to our heart. So here we see that the heart seems to be more easily resonant with this cycle of highs and lows than the more intellectual idea of progress. And we have to live with our head and our heart and work around the discrepancies. This is life. But in the big cycle that we talk about, we start the cycle, you can start anywhere, but we start the cycle at its highest point, which we call the Golden Age, where everything is new, the new creation, you can say. The idea of God as the creator of paradise is quite widespread. Nobody knows quite how that happens, but definitely this is thought of as the beginning. So in the beginning, the world was beautiful, everyone was pure, there were no illnesses, no suffering, civilization was balanced and good. And that is what we are longing for. Our nostalgia takes us to the good old days, the ancient past, and yet it is also something that we are striving for in the future. So looking at the cycle, the Golden Age, in the context of time, where time implies deterioration, the Golden Age declines and eventually becomes what we call the Silver Age. A little alloy has entered into the gold, and the quality of the metal, the quality of humanity, the quality of life has decreased somewhat. And then we also talk about a huge change. If you look at the image of the swastika, the arms at first are high and on the right, and then low, but still on the right. When you move the continuation of the swastika, the direction of the arms moves to the left-hand side. And in Latin, the word for the left is sinister. And in English, the word sinister means something bad, something dark, something happened that is really not good. So something happened where we shifted from the right side of existence to the left side, from the pure side to the sinister side. And this is also reflected in some traditions, like in the Bible, as a fall from grace. You hear of Adam and Eve moving from paradise, falling out of paradise, and becoming aware of themselves physically, acquiring shame about their nakedness, covering themselves. And it is said that the awareness of their physicality was what cast them away from the innocence of the pure world of paradise. So then we move into that age, which we call the Copper Age. And the Copper Age means copper is now no longer a pure metal. It is a base metal, but nevertheless, the electricity passes through it very well. Anyone who is dealing in technology knows that the best conductor of electricity is gold. And so in computers, gold is used so that the signal can transfer very well. And in many ways, the soul that we are is powered by something that resembles electricity. Electricity is in the world of the physical world, but still people don't quite understand exactly what electricity is. We know what it does. And the power in the soul has to get transferred to the nervous system, which is also run by a kind of electricity. And so the relationship between the soul and the body is that the power in the soul gives life to the body. And again, we know in technology that when electricity is passing, we will say that it is live. So electricity is very much the sign of something being enlivened or alive. When we go into the Copper Age, the state of consciousness, the state of civilization is drastically changed. And then there is a bifurcation in human civilization where the state of the past is no longer accessible other than in myth or in dreams or in religious stories. Now we're in a different world altogether, and that is the world of recorded history, whereas the world of the golden and silver ages is more like pre-recorded history that we have no access to through the record of the archaeological record, the paleontological record. So some sort of vast change happened in the world that really broke everything. And then as we continue through the Copper Age, we see the establishment of the great religions and the establishment of multiple civilizations that rise and fall in different parts of the world. We also see the global population getting larger and larger, and it is an exponential rise. And at the present time, I mean, within my lifetime, the global population has doubled. And people are very, very concerned about the population problem, because the world is not going to be able to sustain an exponentially increasing population, where we also see very severe effects of overpopulation in terms of food shortage, land shortage, conflict, ethnic cleansing, many people who are cast onto the high seas because they have become stateless, nowhere to go, and for people in this condition, life is really hell. So we would say that according to the signs, which are also mentioned in different scriptures and mythologies, that the circumstances that we have faced today do correspond with something that some call the end times. So in the cycle that I mentioned, golden, silver, copper, and iron, we're basically seeing how the human experience shifts from absolute perfect paradise to the total opposite, perfectly horrendous hell for very many people. Not for everyone, but for many. A large majority of people have difficulty in their lives. So how can it continue, and where will it go? So what we see in the schematic of the cycle that we look at in the spiritual university is that there is a change period where you go from the bottom to the top, which we call the confluence age, where the end and the beginning flow into each other. And I will talk about that in detail in the next session. Let us look at some other names that are given for these 4 ages that correspond to the division in the swastika. And in India, it is said that the first time period is Sat Yuga. It's called yugas, the ages. So the first yuga is the age of truth. And in Indian philosophy, truth means not just correct, but it also means real, as in real gold, no alloy, as in a real diamond, not a fake diamond. Real as in all the people are really in contact with their true self. There's no false ego. There's no loss of sense of self. Everyone is in their truth. And matter, people, social systems, everything is in a state of integrity. There's no loss of energy. The quality of matter, the quality of society, everything is at its highest. So this is called the age of truth. And there is also one language, one civilization, one sense of a way of life. So there is unity in that age of truth. Then the second age, which I called the Silver Age, this is called the 3/4 time. So the quality of life, the quality of matter is good, but only 3/4 as compared with the whole. And there is a comparison with the moon. When there is the full moon, then it's called Sat, it's called true. But the moon continues to wane. And when the first quarter of the moon has become dark, so that corresponds to the Silver Age. Of course, the cycle of the moon is monthly. That's why the word month comes from the moon. And that then continues to darken, continues to deteriorate, and you get halfway point. And so the third age in India is called Dwapur, and that means everything splits into two. So spirituality and material life is split, and it becomes two different things as opposed to one integrated experience. Politically, everything splits. Religion and politics splits. Different civilizations start to occur. There is all sorts of splits that happen. Something happens to the climate. Many things happen where there is breakdown and the beginning of human suffering, sorrow, conflict, like this. This is the characteristic of the Copper Age or the Dwapar Yuga. And at that time, everyone is thinking about spirituality. There is a remembrance of God, the search for God, the search for truth, the feeling of loss and search, the quest. It's a time of great confusion. And then there's a continuing decline, and that decline becomes more and more rapid. Then we get to the last quarter, which is called the Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga, the dark age, the age of death, the age of ignorance, the age of darkness, sorrow, big time wars, collapsing civilizations, and so we find all around us that circumstances are getting really quite bad, and our ability to manage them is getting less and less, and we experience more and more feelings of hopelessness and disempowerment. And then what? Then there has to be huge change. So I think most people feel that we are on the edge of something totally, totally different. And I also feel that. So what do we have to do in such a case, in such a situation? Of course, what we have to do is restore ourselves to our original level of empowerment, purity, love, strength. And so this is why I think the characteristic of this period of time is that everyone is very intensively searching for truth, for meaning, for spirituality, for God. And I think this is also the time when, as Sister Prajwa said, where it is the end of time, that is the time when the Deus ex machina comes into the machine and restores it to its original perfection, glory, and beauty, and also restores us. So this is why at the beginning of the series, the focus of attention was, what am I? Am I a body, which is perishable, or am I a being, which is imperishable? And our conclusion was, of course, no, I'm not a body. I have a body. I am a being. And this session on the cycle also shows us that myself, the being, does not remain the same all the way through the cycle. I do take rebirth through different bodies because a body has a very short time duration, lifespan of a body, maybe in the best of times, in the golden era, you could get a lifespan of 150 years. That would be normal. And you would not die of some accident or some illness, but you would just have a feeling that, okay, now I will go and take another birth. I will become a baby and get a new life with new parents and new family. And that is very natural because people there are soul conscious. But by the time we go to the Copper Age, the Dwapar Yuga, there's a terrible break between soul and body, and you start to think, I'm a body. And then death is something to be really afraid of, because death means the end of me, the body. And so we need to restore ourselves to soul consciousness so that we know that death is not the end. It is simply a change of clothing. The body is clothing that I put on, and it is an instrument through which I act and interact with other embodied people. And then this loss of consciousness of the soul goes more and more. The lifespan is less and less, disease, and so on. And so now we find ourselves at the end of the cycle, but also the beauty is that a new cycle is coming. A new cycle is showing itself, like the pre-dawn sky is brighter and pinker, and when the sun shows itself over the horizon, people feel happiness, because our relationship with daylight, with sunshine, is very deep, and it is symbolic of our relationship with the Supreme Being, who brings us new light, a new life, a new understanding. And so we arrive at this cusp between the old cycle and the new cycle. And this is where the whole question of yoga comes into it, because yoga is the lamp whose oil has run out must get a refill so that my light of my soul can be brightened and get enough oil for me to continue to be bright until the full duration of the next cycle. And so this is where we are at this time. And so I would like to close there. I think that I have shown the way the cycle turns, but you may have some questions about it that I could maybe further elaborate on. So thank you. Om Shanti.
Paradox of time, because on one side we see progress in terms of technology, as you mentioned, for example, the open heart surgeries and many other things. As a matter of fact, my mom went through an open heart surgery, and it was a complete boon that she went through it. It saved her life. And on the other hand, we see this deterioration in the world, this catastrophe of overpopulation, an acute shortage of food, pollution and climate crisis and whatnot. And so when we see these two different things, and most importantly, the extinction of the feeling of brotherhood and the decline in our moral and spiritual values. So how do we, you mentioned when you were talking that we need to restore ourselves, but when we look at these two different scenarios, it's quite depressing, and how do one, because we're surrounded by so many sorrowful things. So how do we get our mindset right, in this point in time?
Yeah, this is a very, very important thing to understand, and that is that this cycle is also compared with classical drama. And classical drama is the way a story emerges, proceeds, and reaches its conclusion in 5 acts. Most of the plays of Shakespeare follow this system of 5 acts, and this human story is also to be seen as something like a 5-act play. And we've looked at 4 of the acts, and the last act I'm going to look at in detail at our next session. But the thing that makes me smile and which stops other people from smiling is to know that after this comes the restoration of spiritual power and spiritual wisdom that is infused into individuals and into the collective. So that is the next thing on the agenda. But for so many people, the next thing on the agenda seems like we're going to keep on going down into some bottomless pit. So how come I have this feeling of knowing it? And that is because of the quest for the search for truth, the quest for the search for reconnection with God has actually reached a conclusion. And yes, contact has been made. The energy is slowly getting restored, and the shift in the self is beginning to happen. The direction of my being is no longer going down into that abyss, but is going up the other way. And the idea of drama is a really helpful instrument, which I'd like to just try to explain to you. Something which really bothers a person is bad things that have happened in the past, and we dwell on it, and we are afraid that the future is going to have more bad things. And this idea of drama is an idea which says, okay, it has happened, it's over, you must let it go, because now something new is happening. And whatever happened, though it might have seemed to be bad, it was actually necessary, because contained in the bad, there is a seed of good. Another way of looking at it is that, we have this saying, every cloud has a silver lining. And so we want to connect with the silver lining and not sit in that dark cloud. So it's like a time where we have the possibility to make choice, and it's urgent that we actually do make the choice, because if we don't make the choice to be positive and let go of the past and let go of bad things, then they kind of drag us down, and we cannot enjoy the shifting in time that is taking place now.
Concept of being an actor came into the picture, and as in a drama, there's like the beginning, and then there's a rise in the story, a rising action, and then the climax. And after the climax, there's a victory moment, or a new beginning, or a splendid end, whatever you call it. That was very nice to imagine. And with that, there's also this, with the drama concept, there's 2 different ideas that come to me. Because one is the actor awareness that I am playing a part and nobody can play my part better than me, because a specific role is meant for me. And the second thing is that I'm going to play my part, and then soon things going to end, and that's it. Everything is going to go smoothly back again. So probably the guest awareness, I come, play my part, and then go back to my original state. So do you want to say anything on that?
I would. What I think is very important for me is if I think of myself as an actor, then the part that I'm playing is actually not really me. It's just a role. And the actor has to get into the part and perform the part. And maybe you have to be a villain, or maybe you have to be a victim, or maybe you have to be a hero. Of course, everybody wants to be a hero, but there's only one hero. You have to have victims, you have to have villains, and so on. And so if you see yourself as an actor, you find yourself playing all sorts of different parts, even in one day. Sometimes you're the actor, victorious one, then it flips over and something really bad happens and you get victimized and so on and so forth. So the idea of the drama is to be able to disidentify with the role and to get a deeper sense of your identity as I am a being of light connected with the source and getting filled. And that is really of greater importance than the circumstances that are around me, because the circumstances are just data. And the important thing for me as an actor getting empowered is handling the circumstances in new ways, so that I'm actually an actor all the way through, regardless of the role and the circumstances, but I'm still a hero actor, and you play your part well, whatever it is, and the audience is with you and getting inspiration from you, even if you're playing a villain or a victim or whatever. There's still something so pure, so powerful that's coming through, and this is what you want to identify with, that essential spiritual being.
Good, you explained it. Sister, you mentioned that you talked about the four yugas, right? There's been a golden age, the silver age, the copper age, and then the iron age. So how do we know that we were a part of it? And if we do know we were a part of it, how was our nature, or how were our qualities in the golden age and so forth, the silver? And how do we, if because we're talking about restoration, then how do we go back to our top pure level, the golden time?
Yeah. Well, we all like to imagine what would it have been like in paradise, and it's really so different from what it is here that you can speculate, of course, and we do speculate, and we can describe perfection as best as we can from our imperfect standpoint. And so we can enjoy ourselves thinking about what it would be like and imagining ourselves there, and in a sense practicing to be like that. But at the same time, the difference between how we are now and how we were then is pretty vast. So I have been thinking about other ways to do that. And that is, of course, you cannot know how many incarnations you've had and what kind of things you have done and what kind of people you have been. But there is this concept of sanskaras, which we talked about a little bit in an earlier session. And that I think the ideals that a person has, there are a lot of people who are idealists, and they have a feeling that why is the world like this when it should be like something else? And so these ideals, I think, are memories of what we experienced at some time, and traces of that are there. And we keep trying to make the world a better place, maybe not succeeding, but we are motivated. We have an inner urge to be perfect, to experience perfect relationships. We are searching for this. And what happens when you do yoga is that this begins to become a reality. But you need quite a lot of yoga power. So you have to think about that. What tends to happen, you will have a nice experience in meditation and you will be empowered, and then it kind of drains away. So you also have to think about how to keep it in such a way it doesn't drain away, but that it builds and that you really experience a big shift. And what we also see is that there are plenty of obstacles which are specially designed to prevent us from being successful. And this is because we need to accumulate so much inner expertise and inner strength to be able to neutralize those obstacles, overcome those obstacles, and sustain our steady state of being connected, being in our power, healing from all of our wounds. So the present period of time, which I alluded to as the confluence age, that's the time in which all of this transformation takes place. And it took a long time for us to reach this stage. So we need to give ourselves time and be patient and quite conscientious in our practice, our regular disciplines and so on, because through that we can actually reach a stable, steady stage that gets closer and closer to what that original golden age stage would have been like.
I would also want to know if Sister La has any questions which we could take. Sister La?
Okay. Yes, could you hear me now? Thank you very much, Sister Denise, for spinning us around the cycle. And I know that each soul is an actor, moment by moment, breath by breath, in a costume of clay, performing forever in this unending play. For you yourself, I don't know, you have so much to look forward to at the conference age. We are at the time that we should have a lot of transformation. What is your, because past, present, and future is almost the same, but do yourself find it fun and have that kind of fond memory of the past, but which is going to happen for the future? What is your future like then, to be so happy when you smile and people will have to just look into your eyes? So what will be the best picture that you can see yourself in the future?
Well, I actually I have this angle on it that whatever I will be in the future, it will take care of itself. I'll get there. But what I focus on is now, because I do feel that whatever I become now, that is then the template for the future. I think that what I try to do is to really become free from false ego. And false ego comes from trauma, and trauma comes from life as we know it. It's full of all sorts of things. And especially when one is a child, you're very, very sensitive, especially if you're highly spiritual, more sensitive than others. When things go wrong for you, they impact you much more, and this impact stays with you and turns into some sort of survival skills, some kind of character defects, some sort of loss of contact with the self. So I use this time to really come back to my essential self. And I feel that if I do it now, then the work that I do now will represent itself in my future incarnations in a very nice way. But I feel that it's so high and so far from what we have in the world today that any type of imagining that I may have of it will be less than what it really is. So that's why I give my full attention to, I need to be in my power now. I need to be the realest, real me, and get closer to that. And I experience that whenever I work through any issues, any state of being not exactly the real me, or let myself get influenced by external circumstances or scenes of the drama, whether they're past or present. All of these I practice to kind of neutralize so that I can just be the real me and in the middle of my universe. And instead of me being influenced by circumstances, I try to be so connected with me and connected with the Supreme Being that dominant influence. And then I feel very good, actually, very good. I try to stay there.
Oh, good. So in general, as an actor, we get lost not knowing how to get back home and rest, be refreshed and get started again. Last episode, you said time is different energy. I was wondering, how does it work with another two energies, physical energies or metaphysical energy, which is called supreme energy and human soul energy? How does God, the supreme energy, intervene to rejuvenate the lost energies and get us ready to get home, to get back home?
The way I see it, I see that God is like a huge energy and a huge resource of information and love and, you know, all the things that we need. And the thing is, we need to be connected. And so it's very subtle. We need to be really soul conscious and in our state of power, and then connect. And we also need to practice to not let ourselves drop down too far, because if you drop too far, it's very big effort to get up again. So not to let yourself drop down. And then God will say, I'm here, but I'm not coming to you. You have to come to me. You know where I am. You know what I am. You know what you have to do. Now do it. And so I give a lot of attention on that, because all the rest is secondary, quite honestly. And if you are connected and in your power, what you have to do will happen very naturally. And what you don't have to do will make itself clear that, okay, you don't have to do it, so leave it. And not get a bit preoccupied by, maybe there are people who say, oh, you have to do this and you can't do that. But you connect into yourself and you say, well, I am doing this and I am doing that, and that's that. And the ability to say no to people is very important. The ability to say no to negative thinking, the ability to say no to worries and fears. And we say, no, whatever it is, I'll deal with it when it gets here. I don't have to worry about anything. It doesn't do any good. And it drains my energy. So really identify what drains my energy and don't do that. And try to get time, moments in between things to just go in, connect, restore the self, constantly restore the self, because we need all the power we can get.
Well, it's still, time is different energy in the way, but we often say that God in time is a great healer. And at the moment in Thailand, I've been working on heals the world through silence last month, and this is the 1st of September. I'm saying to heal the heart and soul through reflection. So what does it really mean to, this is like a time for God to do his work as a healer, but what's time to do then? Cycle after cycle, eternally turning, returning, and turning, returning. Only God is beyond the universe that can guide and empower us, then left us free to take our own course in the great play of life. So what do you think time is doing? As you say, we use time in a worthwhile way, but time is a great healer. I mean, living things through the drama, living things as it is, using time with connected with God. Is that the thing connected like that?
I know that people say time is a healer. To me, pain is a healer. And God gives us the power to get through our pain without getting taken down by our pain. Mostly, I think we avoid our pain because we don't like pain, and pain is painful. But what we get from God is power to endure, power to actually manage negative feelings, self-doubt, pain, wounds. What God will do, I think, in my experience at least, when we're in deep meditation and we're focused and connected with God, and really the yoga is flowing, then God will break open the deep gates to the subconscious where our pain is buried, and it will allow it to come up. And he gives us the light and the power to manage that, so that all this deep poison, which is driving us in the depth of our subconscious, comes in front of us. We have to see it, we have to face it, we have to pass through it, acknowledge it, and let it go. And to me, this is how God is the healer. And we need to allow that that process of all the deeply buried wounds and pain and darkness to come up for cleaning. He's called the purifier. Purifier means clean. And so I have been working with that and finding that it's really very good. Yeah.
I think you're great at that. Anyway, we kind of go into details, isn't it? It's just like pain is a sequence or the result of neglecting the principle, the basic principle of life. But how about you yourself learn about the principle of drama, to be the best actor, to be a hero? We at the moment we need to graduate from your lesson. You keep talking about pain, and I really agree that if you're not going through pain and suffering, they may not learn anything at all. So what is you to learn about the lesson you have, and then we can graduate from you as the best actor, if I can say, because you learn about the principle of drama. What is the principle of drama, actually? That's my question.
To me, the principle of drama is that it's really all in the mind, and that you have the option to interpret it in many different ways. So the idea is to choose to interpret it in such a way that you take maximum advantage, because the drama will present different scenes, good ones, bad ones, whatever. And when you get pulled into the scenes, you get pulled out of your power. So the principle of drama is like a test. Here's a scene where I'm going to make it look as real as real as real. And you need to be holding on to the awareness that it's actually not real. And you have to respond to the drama's attempt to get you to get pulled into it by remaining the detached observer, appreciate the scenes, and know that that is not me. And this is what, this is how you get a pass mark in the exam, because the exam is, here is something that looks real. Now, can you maintain your awareness that it's not real, but you are real, and your stage of consciousness in when you're watching the drama is entirely up to you. You can choose. You have the power to choose. You are free. Now, exercise your freedom in the face of something that wants to take you over.
That's beautiful. That leading us to up to now. Sister Denise, you know exactly what Thailand is in a way that we use the word swastika in our Thai greetings, Swaddi Club or Swadika, male or female using. But the same Swati is derived from the word Sanskrit, swastika. So I'm really happy to really use the symbol or this image to help me, to remind me that, you know, we need to be understand auspiciousness, good luck, and well-being in using this term. So thank again for this icon using swastika to open up the episode 5 into the cycle of time. So nothing I can say it again, Sister Denise. It's so much that we learned from you. And is there anything else, Sister Pashwa, want to just add on? And I know that we really will take so much time of you. This month we have to finish episode 6 and episode 7, and you keep telling later on we're going to go into more detail of the importance of time. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you again. And I just want to put my palm together, and this is Thai greeting, Sawadee Ka. So it's just greetings, and also say goodbye to you. Thank you again for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Sister Dennis. Sawasdee Ka, that's how we say namaste as well. And it was a very beautiful note to end on, because people say often that whatever happens, happens for good. So in a sense, drama is beneficial. But I, a detached observer, and it's in my hand. I have a freedom of choice to choose whether I want to watch as a detached observer the illusions, and that's where I have to choose if I have to stay true to my state or then go down the spiral of whatever happening in the illusions. So that's a very important awareness to keep, and it kind of calms you down because it keeps you in control of whatever you are seeing around you. So that was very nice. And thank you.
Turn the attention within. I go to the center of the swastika. See the image of the swastika spinning around gold, silver, copper, iron. Perfect, 3/4, half, 1/4, nothing, then full. Spin that cycle rapidly, and you see the totality is just one thing. Light divides into 7 colors through a prism, and the soul also is divided into the 4 stages. When you spin the swastika around yourself, it becomes white light. Your relation to the pure and the impure and all the stages in between is I am one integrated whole. I am me, and the totality of me is pure, powerful, peaceful. This is my reality. Stay in that spinning real stage, and the mind goes easily direct to God, focused, aligned, and the light flows in. The soul becomes still, focused, aware. I am spinning like the universe, spinning and totally stable. Whatever spins remains in one plane, and I have a quiet, still mind, steady in one plane, in my power, connected. I am at peace. Om Shanti.
The never-ending cycle. Time moves in a cycle. Eternity itself can be measured in an ever-repeating cycle of time. This most ancient concept changes our understanding. The time we refer to as the beginning is a time of perfection. But as we travel through time, we become bound in physical awareness, no longer truly understanding ourselves as eternal. Fear is born. Out of that fear, we begin to break universal laws. Now that time of perfection is only dimly remembered in myth and fable. But this winter of the world is not endless night, stretching on forever into the future. For what we thought was a straight line is a cycle, and it turns the world forward to its beginning. To know the never-ending cycle of time is the fifth key